hopefully you will post where you're hailing from in the chat because I really want to know where's everybody calling in from. So as Lori mentioned, my name is Bo English-Wiczling. I'm a senior director in the Oracle database team. I lead all of the developer relations initiatives here. I've been in technology for more than 27 years, and I've created some products that you might use today. I also started engineering teams of more than 450 from scratch. I tackled some of the most difficult challenges that people said couldn't be done, and I did it, some of them in record time with some creative solutions. And then to give you a little information about my background, I'm an immigrant from Korea. So I was born in Korea and moved to the States when I was 4. So English is my second language. So apologies if you hear anything incorrect. My family started out extremely poor when I was young. And we struggled to have some of the basics, such as food and shelter when I was younger. But those struggles, I think, have helped make me who I am. And it's reminded me why I want to be successful. And I've consistently been the only woman in the room overcoming all of these misconceptions. And so I have done my best to redefine what it means to be a female leader in tech. And today I want to share with you some of those things that I learned along the way and why you should pay it forward so that you create an inclusive and diverse team. So first I want to share just a lay of the land. And if you wouldn't mind, tell me in chat, what do you think that 50% stands for? So I'll give you a second. Post in chat, just randomly, that 50%, what do you think that stands for? Now, tell me in chat, what do you think the 25% stands for? All right, so let me share with you what these numbers mean. Women account for 50% of the population worldwide, but only accounts for 25% of the roles in engineering worldwide. And in the US, it's even worse. It's only 20%. So here are some stats that I want to show, just a larger picture of where women in tech stand. So typically, software engineers make about $122,400 a year as of 2022. And then for every dollar that a male software engineer makes, female software engineers only make 92 cents. Out of 5 leadership positions held in software engineering, only 1 is going to be held by a woman. And only 18% of the computer science degrees earned in the United States are earned by women. And that number is expected to increase only by 1% to 19% by 2026. And then for minorities, these numbers start to get really worse. So only 3% of available computing jobs are held by Black women. And then minorities, so this is Black, BIPOC, multiracial, Latinx, Pacific Islander, and Indigenous ethnic groups only make up about 6% of all new tech employees. Of the women hired in tech positions, 1.7% are Hispanic, 2.2% are Black, 9.6% are Asian, and 14.1% are white. Women in tech positions are more likely to be laid off than men. Now, in chat, post, what do you think this number stands for? And I'll give you a second to put that in there. So as of 2021, only 41 women, not percent, 41 women have held CEO positions in a Fortune 500 company. Out of the 3,000 largest US companies, only 6.2% of them have a female CEO. Only 15% of tech business CEOs or senior executives are women. And for every dollar made by a male CEO in a tech business startup, female CEOs make 89% or 89 cents. In 2021, female tech CEOs saw a 27% reduction in their salaries, whereas male tech CEOs saw a 1% increase. And then for tech workers that are over 35 years of age, 20.4% of women stay in a junior level position, where only 5.9% of men stay in those positions. So why am I sharing all these numbers with you? And why should you care about all of these numbers? That's because workplaces with a gender diversity are just plain better. And studies have proven this. So businesses with more gender representation in leadership positions, where at least 30% are women, are more likely to have higher work productivity. They are 25% more capable of producing above average profitability than poorly diversified companies. At McKinsey and Company study, it showed that companies in the top 25% for racial and ethnic and gender diversity were almost 36% more likely to have a superior financial return. Work productivity in companies with higher gender diversity can increase as high as 48% more than in companies with little to no diversity. And companies with high gender diversity outperform those with low gender diversity by 73% when making business decisions. For example, women are 34% better at working out compromises, I think we all know this, and 25% better at mentoring. The World Economic Forum research shows that companies with above average diversity scores drive 45% average revenue from innovation than companies with below average diversity scores. Now that I've shared with you what we're up against as women and why women in the workplace is so much better, let me share some tips on how to overcome those barriers so you can shine as the only woman in the room. Let's start with this one. First, because it affects so many of us, and it's going to help with the next 3 tips that I've shared. But how many of you have ever had these thoughts in your head? I don't know if I should be in this meeting. I'm not qualified to apply for this job. Or how many of you have gotten uncomfortable when someone introduced you as an expert? What about a compliment, for example? Do you get embarrassed when someone compliments you on a job well done? Do you ever diminish your accomplishments? For example, if somebody says, "Great job, Bo," do you say something along the lines of, "That wasn't me, all me, it was Joe, it was all Joe," for example? There are many studies and courses on how to overcome imposter syndrome, but you have to learn to overcome this. Not everything and not perfectly, but we have to learn some strategies to be able to overcome this because we need it to speak up and open that door for your potential success. So there's an author, Claire Joseph, who has a website about this, ditchingimpostersyndrome.com. And she has just a wealth of information about how to overcome some of these and how to overcome some of these mechanisms that we rely on to overcome the gap between who we are and who we think we should be. And she says, imposter syndrome is context dependent. So when something is important to you, it's more likely that it's going to trigger imposter syndrome. So this is why when you're fighting for something important, you can experience just a ton of self-doubt. Most of you have probably felt that tight feeling in your stomach, the body flinching, getting a little twitch somewhere. This is one of your earliest signs of imposter syndrome that's about to rear its ugly head. And so she says that this is when you have to ask yourself that self-coaching question, and you've got to be brutally honest with yourself. Is it really true what I'm thinking about? Or is it just imposter syndrome speaking? And the next step is to press pause on those stress hormones, that cortisol or adrenaline rush that you feel when it feels like you're about to go into that stress drive. So when you're worried, when you're anxious, when you're stressed out, that feeling, you've got to press pause and learn to slow this down. And you have to do it with breathing, closing your eyes, and then having that self-coaching talk. Is it true, or am I just thinking this? And all that story that we keep telling ourselves about how we're not great, all that what if, all those things that you worry about, all those things where you have self-doubt, all of that can come back down to neutral in about a minute. So it doesn't even take that long for you to do this. But as soon as we let go of that need to be stuck in that stress adrenaline mode, we can let go of that need to fight and then stop beating ourselves up. That is number one. The next one that I want to share with you is microaggressions. And they are a real thing. So if you're wondering what's a microaggression, it's a verbal, behavioral, or environmental slight that communicates some kind of hostility, some kind of derogatory or negative attitude, and it's usually towards a stigmatized or culturally marginalized group that are based on factors such as race, orientation, your age, maybe your ability, and in this case, possibly religion. So let me give you an example. A manager that shakes the hand of a man first before shaking a hand, or passing over your idea in silence, congratulating the man next to you for verbalizing the exact same idea as Brooke. Or how many of you have seen maybe a white person clutching their bag or purse when they see a black man? These are all microaggressions. And sometimes people who commit them may not even be aware that they're doing it. So for example, I was interviewing a man for a software development role, and he asked me if I was the administrative assistant or the HR person. Not that I have anything against admins or HR folks. These are fantastic jobs and roles, and you are a great role at supporting those that are working in these fields. But it was clear that for this candidate, if I was the only woman that was in this interview panel, I had to have not been afterward of support, for example. And that's not always the case. So one of the lessons that I learned about microaggressions is they take a toll. You have to take them seriously. And this is especially true in the workplace because those microaggressions cause stress. They make you dread work. They make you shrink into yourself and not want to engage or participate in your role. You can't be fully yourself if you can't do that. So you have to learn to confront them effectively. And if they don't pose a threat, or you know that the individual who is who is doing those microaggressions won't ever change, you have to also then learn to ignore them and move on. But you have to pick which one is it. If you're experiencing a microaggression, that relationship is important to you, whether it's personal or work, take them aside. If it's a group setting or regardless, you want to do this on a personal one-to-one level and ask them, say, hey, I couldn't help but notice. So there's a wonderful author named Stephen Young who talks about microaggressions. And one of the tips that he shares is this phrase, I couldn't help but notice. So for example, I couldn't help but notice that you rolled your eyes when I suggested this thing. I couldn't help but notice that you didn't refer this person's preferred gender. The goal is not to embarrass this person, but it's to understand how their actions may come across to other folks. And weaponizing this is not recommended. But you can effectively confront them to try and show them, and this is what it sounds like when you do this. The third one I want to share with you is doing what scares you. So I'm an introvert by nature, and talking to people, whether it's one person or 1,000 people, scares me to death equally. So like right now, for example, I am inside dying. But in meetings, speaking up and sharing your opinion in a setting where you've got, 10 SVPs and EVPs, it frightens me to no end. When you're the only woman in the room, in that meeting room sometimes, you don't know if you're going to have backup or if you're going to be leading a firing squad when you share your thoughts. And that's okay. But I learned that not speaking up is so much worse. So what ended up happening was my ideas get credited to other men. They get viewed me as quiet or timid. They may also view me as not being a leader. And so I started speaking up. I started doing the thing that scared me. And how did I do that? So I practiced, and I started with small, then gradually larger. And every time I did it, I had a small panic attack, but I powered through it again and again and again. And I practiced with friends. I practiced with colleagues that I trusted. I even practiced with my husband. So I went and did all of those things that scared me every day, a little at a time. So first with one person, maybe then with 5 people. Eventually I'm giving talks in front of crowds of 1,000 people at conferences. And this was not easy. It didn't happen overnight. But if you practice and if you do this, you learn to desensitize from some of those things that scares you. And then you can do that until it doesn't scare you anymore. The next tip I want to share with you is about building alliances. Why would you need to build alliances? So let me tell you a little story that happened not too long ago. So I had a manager, we didn't get along. And I found out that there was most likely going to be a RIF happening. And a RIF is a reduction in force. You may call this a reorg. Sometimes it's called a restructure, whatever the term is that's used in your company. But I knew that my manager would probably take that opportunity to get rid of it. And sure enough, he did that. So the week before Thanksgiving, he told me my role was being eliminated and I had 2 weeks to find something else or I would have to leave the company. And but I kind of knew this was probably going to come. And so months prior to this RIF, I started building relationships. I started finding other people in my company that I liked, people I looked up to, people that I had trusted. And I reached out to them immediately because I had been setting the groundwork for months prior. And within 2 days, I had another job on another team in the company. And here's the best part. That manager that got rid of me, the relationship switched, and him and his team ended up supporting our team. So essentially now, York's rough. So this is a situation I think that happens quite a bit at work because we are women and because we're more likely to build those relationships, build those networks. But let me give you another example, which I think exemplifies this pretty well. I've got a friend, Dr. Blue Fam, who runs Asian Upward or Elevate, and he shared the story with me, so I want to share it with you. I want all of you to close your eyes. Everyone close your eyes, and I want you to imagine this scenario. You're in your house. It's a street, it's a playground. Now, in that playground, there's your neighbor's little 6-year-old daughter, Susie. And she seems to be taking a bag of white powder in it from an older person you can't really see. They're in a baseball cap and they have allergies. What would you do in this situation? Would you call the police? If you would call the police, write police in chat. Close your eyes in the morning. Same scenario, but the person takes off their baseball cap and it's your best friend. Now I want to know, would you call the police? And if you would, write police in chat. But if not, write no. That's right. A majority of you probably wouldn't call the police. And that's how alliances work. You're willing to bend the rules or break the law to save your best friend. And at work, there are people who, if they like you, they will shield you. So they will bend the rules to help you. This tip I want to share with you is watch what people do. It's more important than what they actually say. And if it's one thing that I learned, it's people will tell you who they are, and they do it not with words, but with action. You remember the thing I told you about microaggressions, when they say, when what they say and what they actually do don't quite match, you have that little feeling in your gut that goes, You have to listen to that. And they're telling you who they are. You have to learn to hear it and trust those instincts. Trust that gut. Trust that body, your body telling you that something's not right. And it's important because you might be trusting someone who really dislikes you, or who is or you're trying to partner with someone that may stab you in that culture. Last topic that I want to touch on is this one, and I want you to be completely honest. Many of you have experiences, but how many of you have ever been stabbed in the back by another woman at work for no reason? How many of you have seen another woman get promoted and think they must be promoted because they're, sleeping with the boss, favorite of somebody, like a whatever, or maybe you've heard negative gossip about someone's appearance or your appearance in the workplace. Or how many of you have excluded other women because their clothes were too tight, or too much cleavage, too much makeup, too much whatever, right? Women, I hate to call you out on this, but we have to stop this behavior. Workplace competition is normal. Talking smack about other women just because they're women isn't okay. And this one's not that hard to do. Just don't think it, don't do it. If we want to create a world that represents all of us, it takes each of us to do what's right. Those were my last tips. And I want you to join me later today at 12:10 Pacific time, 3:10 Eastern time for my meet and greet. I would love to hear some of your questions, and please connect with me on LinkedIn using the QR code. Thank you.